Sorry, Ooh, welcome back to a spooky Uninformed movie reviews. A bonus episode where we're talking about The Haunting of Bly Manor, the Netflix limited series by Mike Flanagan.
I really appreciate that gusto, David.
Oh, thank you. Welcome back, gentlemen. Here we are for our last entry in the spooky season. How exciting. What a packed month it's been, hasn't it?
Oh, fantastic. October, if you will, without all the experiences we normally enjoy, like corn mazes and haunted houses and the like. They can never take the spooky movies and TV from us. They can never take that away. Unless there's like an EMP or something and that stuff doesn't work.
Oh my God. Don't say that.
Then what will we do? We'll be just stuck with our thoughts.
No.
And that'll be the real horror movie.
Bust out our old dusty copies of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The much better book versus the film that was inspired by the book.
Which is, they were just talking about that sequel too. Same crew behind it. But let's not dwell on terrible things. Let's talk about this new show. So The Haunting of Bly Manor is like the second in what is now the Haunting series. I'd like to describe it as good American Horror Story.
Yeah,
probably
that's accurate.
Best way to put it. Yeah,
but it's hard to say because it's only at the second season, and I'd say that the first two seasons of American Horror Story are good.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? Actually, it's probably pretty close, but I would say that American Horror Story season 1 isn't as strong as Haunting of Hill House.
No,
you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Although I would say that they're also taking very different approaches and have very different goals. These kind of tales.
Yeah. Definitely.
What's his name? Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy likes to, especially in season 1, take it up to 11 in the crassness and explicit things on camera. But Mike Flanagan is a auteur.
Yeah, Ryan Murphy's really big and showy and likes, pushing the envelope, so to speak. And he's behind like Nip Tuck too, and Glee. What a weird one.
I forgot about Nip Tuck. I forgot Nip Tuck was a thing.
I think most people did. But okay, so the Haunting series, we had Haunting of Hill House in 2018. We talked about it on the channel. We loved it. I'm speaking for everybody here, but I know because we all talked about it. Solid show based on a book, The Haunting of Hill House. And to my understanding, pretty loosely based, like mostly, rewritten for the screen. And maybe, what was it? Like a year ago, they announced The Haunting of Bly Manor. And I remember kind of being apprehensive about this idea. I just thought, why try and return? Why try and do it again? But I guess as far as my impressions in the spoiler-free section, I gotta say that I really enjoyed Haunting of Bly Manor. And I hate to just be like comparing, but it's kind of hard to not compare. I don't think it's as strong as Hill House, but I still think it's a really good season of television. I think it's like a really strong TV show.
I think it's totally fair to compare them. I mean, this is the first outing since Hill House, and this is like our first impression of what Mike Flanagan can do in a series format, aside from what he did in the first season, for sure. And you're right. I mean, it is quite different in the approach that it takes, in the pacing that it takes, in the characters that it writes, but it is also this more or less the same ensemble cast. So it's got a lot of the same ingredients, It's just kind of a different recipe, to put it in a term like that. But I mean, honestly, I was pleased with it. Overall, great. I got my gripes here and there, but they're very minimal. It's still a beautiful story. It's still got heart. It's still got the spooks. So I'm happy with it.
Oh yeah, I think you said it perfectly. It's like they're two different dishes, but in the way that like nachos and like a taco are different dishes. They have all the same aspects. They're just put together a little bit differently for sure. And yeah, it's awesome because, like David said, it did inspire a little bit of nervousness to find out they were gonna go ahead and take a second whack at it. But it was very refreshing to see that they were able to pull off something that like didn't give you the feeling of, oh, so we're gonna do like these steps again, and we're going through these same motions. That's not as all what you get with Bly Manor. It is very much like its own story, and that you get, like Danny said, a ton of heart. You go through all the emotions. It gives you the whole rainbow of the human spectrum of emotions in this series for sure.
I'm lining up with you guys 100% here. That was one of the coolest things about this. It was so refreshing. Just that it was a totally different story. I mean, I guess the setting is somewhat similar. We're in another big gothic house. And if anything, I guess that's what this subgenre would be, right? Like gothic horror is kind of what
gothic
it's
romance is what I'm seeing too,
Ooh.
Which I'd never thought of. I mean, another movie that kind of paints that same genre type for me would probably be like Crimson Peak. I don't know if you guys seen that one.
I'm not familiar.
Guillermo del Toro one.
Pretty okay.
Yeah, a very underwhelming movie that definitely shot all its budget into the trailer makers for sure.
It looks beautiful. Like,
yeah, it's a beautiful
looking at the movie looks beautiful, but watching it, man,
it's so boring.
It's pretty boring. That's a great way to put it. This one is a love story, and that's really where the big difference is. The first season is a family drama. It's about familial relationships, and particularly how death in the family can affect familial relationships. But this second season, or the second series, I guess is the better way to call it, we have most of the same ensemble cast with a lot of new faces too, and a lot of great performers. Like the new people they got were awesome. But this one is about love, and it's not even about, particularly two characters. It's like a series of characters who are all sharing this kind of romantic. It's like a Woody Allen movie.
It's
set
like
in a haunted mansion.
A spooky This Is Us without as much cheese.
I haven't seen This Is Us. Michelle refuses to watch it because we just keep hearing how sad it is.
Man, all this talk of nachos
it's not
and
a
tacos
tragic
and cheese is
This
making
Is
me
Us.
hungry.
This Is Us is way more tragic, I'd say. It's definitely more relishing in love. Maybe what I'm looking for is what's that Christmas movie we watch all the time?
Jingle All the Way?
Which not Jingle All the Way, but it's the one with I feel it in my fingers.
I feel it in my toes.
Love Actually. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a dark Love Actually.
Well, I don't know. Rick Grimes is stealing his best friend's wife in that movie. That's pretty dark, man.
Pretty dark.
That is pretty dark.
That's one part of that movie that I was always like, dude, this is kind of a messed up move. What's this isn't painted in a very good light. Would you guys mind if I hit it with a good old synopsis, at least of the beginning? I'm not going to synopsis the whole movie.
Yeah, David, I suppose as long as you don't synopsis the crap out of it, I am not opposed at all.
Well, here's our basic setup. Okay, we have Victoria Pedretti, who is Nell Crane in season 1, the youngest of the Crane family. In this season, she's playing Danny Clayton, and she's an au pair. Who is that's a League reference for all 7 people who watch that show. She's an au pair at she takes a position. She's an American living in England and takes a position at Bly Manor, which is where kind of all of our characters revolve around. We have a few adults there. There's Amelia Eve, who plays Jamie. She's like the gardener. We have Tania Miller, who's Mrs. Gross. She's like the housekeeper. And we have Raul Coley, who plays Owen, who's like their cook. And together, the 4 of them are really taking care of the young wards, Flora and Miles, 2 children whose parents died. And now they're kind of, they're left in the care of these people. And also their uncle, who's a bit estranged. And of course, we learn the reasons why he's estranged throughout the story.
Similar situation to Love Actually.
Yeah. And the kids, I just want to shout their names out. We have Emily B. Smith playing Flora and Benjamin Evan Ainsworth playing Miles.
Fantastic.
It's always great. Yeah, you know what? It's always great to see an awesome like kid actor, and these two were really good. Had great chemistry with each other.
They were perfectly splendid. David.
They were perfectly splendid. I agree. I agree, man. Yeah.
Yeah, those two little kids were full of character for sure. They did not have a problem like holding their own like spot on the screen for sure.
Well, is it time to get into spoilers? Is there anything you guys would like to say that's spoiler free before we start diving into what happens in the show?
I'd say give it. I mean, you're more than likely going to give it a watch if you had any interest in the first season, and I'd say just give it a chance. Give it time. That's what I will say.
Definitely, yeah. I will say that it is a slow build story-wise for sure. As far as like the amount of spookies you're gonna get, it's not a we're gonna make you jump over and over. It's horror. You know what I mean? It's gothic horror that it builds, but when you get there, it is very much worth it.
You know, all I'll say spoiler free is if you haven't checked out any of the Haunting series, as long as you're down to feel a bit sad, as long as you're down to have a box of tissues next to you, I think this is some of the best horror we've gotten. And especially, it really takes advantage of that formatting, being able to really stretch out a story and explore all these characters. So, I mean, this is exciting stuff to me. It's definitely better than that Owen Wilson movie. But with that, I guess it's time for spoilers.
Ooh. Oh.
Sorry,
See,
Danny.
I'm not the only one that's popping cold ones.
I'm encroaching on your bit here. So, I mean, typically when we do these, episodes about a whole series, we don't go beat by beat every episode. It just seems kind of cumbersome. We typically like do a character and talk about those characters and what they've done. Is there a character in mind you guys want to start with?
Well, I mean,
I feel like I want to
Franco?
go from like smallest impact or like smallest screen time, which I feel like naturally would be the gardener, but she ends up playing like a way huger role like in the end. You know what I mean? So maybe
Talk about spoilers
Owen
right off.
or Mrs. Gross, perhaps.
I think they're a good pair to touch on.
Yeah, and they're like
I
part
love
of like
Owen.
the core like family, you know what I mean? Owen is one of my favorite like new characters. That guy is just absolutely delightful. Would be an awesome character.
played by
like,
Rahul Kohli, who I've never seen before. I'm trying to think what he's in. He's in iZombie and
I've
Harley
never
Quinn.
seen that one. Never seen that one.
Never seen
Fantastic mustache on that guy. My goodness. Thing looks like a broom. It's great. He is like, if anything, like the bulk of our comic relief. He's got like super cheesy jokes and pun works, which are like fantastic. They're like well thought out and everything. He's the cook in this situation. And then his love interest is Miss Gross, the housekeeper, but they have a very much, they play it off like they are at odds. That is the way that they flirt, like they're annoyed with each other. And they're definitely a delightful couple throughout as you watch them like grow closer and they break the crap out of your heart.
They have a really good chemistry, and it works naturally on screen for sure.
I feel like this is a weird thing to point out too, but isn't she significantly older than him? I mean, I didn't look up their ages, but just when I was watching the show, it's like, this lady's like a lot older than this guy, isn't he? I don't know.
Yeah, a good
Maybe
chunk, but this guy spent some time in France, you know what I mean? His rules are probably a little laissez-faire, if you will.
Ain't that the truth? So, I mean, we're in full-blown spoilers, okay? So you've been warned. But the biggest thing about this show is its exploration of ghosts. And a lot of the characters you find out aren't alive. But Owen is one of the only ones who makes it out. Owen's one of the only guys who actually lives through the whole story.
He's actually alive.
Yeah.
And the gardener. Yeah.
And the children
What's her
and the
name?
uncle.
Jamie. What's really interesting is like that part of the story, you kind of get, they don't work too hard to make that too hard to deduce. Like, I think if you've seen movies kind of like this before, you could figure out that most people are dead, like, by the third episode, maybe. And this kind of reminds me of... I really liked it because it reminded me of The Others, which is an amazing movie like that.
Yeah. I hadn't made that connection, but you're spot on, man. It's like the same thing.
I have not seen
Frank, have
this.
you ever seen the others?
I was just going to say I've not seen this film, but if it's a very similar concept, I could get into that.
Well, I can't spoil about that.
Yeah. And it's got Nicole Kidman in it, and she's really good.
I like her.
Solid. She looks like a ghost already, too.
Yeah, that's a good start.
But, you know, one thing I got to say, and this stood out to me immediately. Haunting of Hill House, some of the twists in that show, I just did not see coming. Like when you found out that Nell was the crooked neck lady,
Yep.
or the bent neck lady, I was floored, man. And I was also just like emotionally devastated. But in this show, you find out that Mrs. Gross has been dead and has been a ghost. But you really find out, like, yeah, like the second or third episode, you're like, oh, this lady's like dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Weird. She's acting strange.
And they do the same thing with Miles, the young boy. He's possessed by Peter. And it's fairly obvious right away that, but the way the show plays it, they reveal it. They make it seem like, oh, you didn't know this. And I was like, well, obviously we knew that. Like, obviously we knew this kid was possessed by this guy.
Well, with Miles, they kind of do it like a layer at a time. But by the time you get to the point they reveal that those layers are already stacked so thick that it's like, yeah, like you said, it's like, no, yeah, duh.
You're right about that, Frank. Like with the layers and like how I think that's part of what I had as a gripe, to be honest, was like by the end or like maybe the penultimate episode, I was like, okay, wait a minute. Who's possessing who? And then they're like combining each other and assimilating, but then someone touched someone in someone else's place. So I need to know. I know it's clear, but it was hard to like keep track of who's in who, to be honest.
It sounds like you're trying to do Oh, sorry. I was going to say it sounds like you're trying to do play-by-play at like a Roman orgy. Just like, I'm not sure what's going on here.
Something there were children at too. Oof.
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh. I was going to say, though, wow, we're going somewhere over there.
I have a sound effect, but I don't have an oh, no. I need to toss one in there.
Oh, no. Yeah, you need to add one of those on
some screeching tires.
Like a horn honking.
Yeah.
But what were we talking about? We were talking about the layers and the big reveal and everything. I think that there's also a bit of a pacing issue, and I think that some of this could have been alleviated by spacing out where information was given. I remember we had Ryan Riddle on to talk about the music box. And I don't think that we talked about it in the podcast. It might have been right before, right after. But he was talking about how he didn't like The Haunting of Hill House. And I was so surprised. I was like, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And he was saying that he didn't like that Netflix pacing. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? And then when I watched this show, it felt like the glass had been shattered or something. Because it's like every episode ends with this really dumb cliffhanger.
He gave you some sage advice.
Well, the worst is like episode 7 and episode 8 end with the same cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did they do it to me twice? I was so offended.
Like episode 8 ends and begins with the same cliffhanger that 7 ends on. Like they use that scene several times.
Yeah, I don't know what the decision was there.
On more of the pacing, it's like by episode 7 and episode 8, because it's only 9 episodes, right? It's not even 10, right?
It's 9. I'm pretty sure.
Strange. Why do they have to do that? Just make it 10. It's so strange. I like most shows
10
have been ending
better,
at
though?
9 now. But also, when we got to the 7th and 8th episode, like in Haunting of Hill House, there was kind of more of like each episode kind of delved into more of the ghosts that they just showed at sporadic parts of the house. And if you look hard enough, maybe even on your second rewatch or your rewatch of Haunting of Bly Manor, you'll notice it. But there are still a bunch of ghosts in the background in Haunting Bly Manor and over the shoulder shots and stuff like that, particularly like the plague doctor and stuff. And while he didn't play such a big role in the end, it kind of made me seem like, okay, well, there was also a soldier there and like all these other things. And I wanted to learn more. And there was like a Scarecrow something out there too, and they just like at the 8th episode they're just like, and that's where they're from, and move on.
Yeah, it was a bit underdeveloped as opposed to the first season seemed so purposeful. And in this season, it seems like they're getting towards the end. They're like, we haven't explored this yet. Let's make an entire episode about the ghosts and the history of the ghosts. And it's literally the second to last episode. It just feels like you're slamming on the brakes because the whole time you're watching that episode, you're like, well, what's going on with this character who's about to die?
And the lady in the lake, you're like, no one's explained this person.
Yeah. I wish they had taken those scenes and spread them out.
Yeah, instead of just one whole episode of them.
Mm-hmm. And then in every episode, you would have been like, you got another little piece of the story. And I think it would have also helped kind of muddy the waters where the rest of it didn't seem so clear. Like most of the other mysteries just seemed kind of obvious compared to the first season. But, and you know what? The person in particular is Mrs. Gross, which they show right away her like losing track of time and kind of being distant. And we also have that crack on the wall thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Which in a lot of ways, though, that device is exactly what goes on with Nell, with Victoria Pedretti's character in season 1. So, that sort of... It's kind of like what we're talking about with the Thing remake. It's not exactly the same scares, but it's the same beats, sort of. Yeah. Like, they're taking some of the same devices and changing a few details. Maybe it could have gone in a different way for a few of these things, but it doesn't ruin it, I guess. I don't want to make it seem like, I'm trying to rip this show apart or something. There's just a few little things that I wish would have been tighter.
I mean, one of the things that I felt was like very tight is the way that they wrap up the series as a whole with episode 9. You finish the story, but then we get like what is essentially like a very concise like epilogue. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's very much like there's pretty much I have no questions left as to like where any of the characters end up. Like I'm 100% satisfied with the knots at the end of everybody's stories by the end of this thing. I feel like they cleaned it up very perfectly.
Yeah, the epilogue is really solid, and it's so satisfying. I hate when you get to like some things it works, some things it doesn't. But in a story like this, you just want to know, especially after the characters have been through such hardship, you want to know how they ended up. Yeah, did they make it out okay?
And it's like you're saying, it's really satisfying, and it's kind of sad too. I mean, it's definitely a sad story in ways. But it's like, oh yeah, Miles and Flora, they don't remember anything. Like all of that tragedy.
It's very like melancholic in a way, you know what I mean? Like getting into like super spoiler territory. Like they don't remember anything like you said, but it's like it's kind of a good thing, And at the same time, the gardener makes sure that like she at least attempts to make sure that the kids know like that there was a sacrifice for them to be able to live their lives this way, which was like a big bummer for Danny. Like I feel like when she finds out the kids don't remember, you could see it on her face like, well, like, damn, like, did I do this for nothing? You know what I mean? But I think in the end she realized like, well, no, like they'll be able to like live their lives. Like I did a really good thing. And then like, again, with the gardener, she's like alone, like constantly pining for like the love of her life, who's like living at the bottom of this lake now. But then you just get the little hand on the shoulder at the end. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, she'll always stay with her at least. It's like a very melancholic ending. Felt like putting on some real sad jams at the end of that to throw on a Radiohead album or something.
It's definitely like a post-rock emo album from Mike Flanagan for sure. You know what I
mean? I can see that. Well, let me see. That's that couple. That's one couple, and that's kind of what we're talking about. Mrs. Gross and Owen. Well, let's talk about another couple. What about? Well, I feel like it'd make more. I know they're the big characters, but I feel like Danny and Jamie make the most sense because we're already touching a lot on that.
I really like how you could kind of see Danny grow into like not trusting anyone and running away from her previous relationship and running away from herself, and that haunting her for like the first 3 episodes or so, or 4 episodes before they like explain the ghost that she's been seeing, which spoiler. I don't know why we have to keep saying spoiler. We're in the spoiler territory.
Yeah.
It's actually her ex-fiance and childhood friend, who she ended up but kind of begrudgingly saying yes to when he proposed to her because she wasn't sure how she felt.
Yeah, that was an interesting little subplot that she's just basically getting married out of pressure, I guess, or not wanting to say no, kind of. She's kind of been put in that point where she has to do it. I think that did that really go anywhere though?
No.
You know what I mean?
I think it just kind of helps you. I mean, did they even need it to kind of let you know that Danny is a lesbian? Really?
They needed to get a couple jump scares in the first episodes, and also, man, does this guy have some serious Gendo Akari vibes?
Oh yeah, man! I was like the entire time I saw him, I was like, those anime glasses.
It's like, Danny, I need you to get back in the Ava. If you aren't going to pilot the Ava, just leave. You are useless. That's what I was expecting that whole time from that ghost.
Or just like you fool. Just push up his glasses.
If you won't do it, I'll get Peter to do it. It just feels like that plot went nowhere. You know what I mean? It was just like they had to have a scare for 3 or 4 episodes, and then it's dropped. They could have incorporated it somewhere towards the end. You know what I mean? It could have been worked in somehow with all these other ghosts.
That poor guy died
it almost kind of just
poor
felt.
guy died for nothing.
Yeah, it kind of just felt like. Well, yeah, Danny was already kind of pre-haunted. She's already predisposed to ghosts.
Yeah, maybe in a way it was supposed to tell us that she's going to be open to experiences, interpreting experiences certain ways. But at the same time, I don't even know if that happens. I mean, doesn't she also
she denies
freak out at every moment that anything spooky happens?
Well, because
she thinks that guy's alive the whole time.
Well, one of the interesting things is it's all a result of the kids trying to protect the adults in their life. You know what I mean? They do their best to make sure that the adults don't know what's happening. They're aware of this lady with no face. They know that she's dangerous because the other ghosts have told them hey, you need to stay away from that lady. So yeah, I thought that was one really cool, interesting aspect to kind of switch it up a little bit instead of the kids trying to go to the adults and the adults not believing them. The kids just take it upon themselves to protect the adults from everything going on here.
That is a really good point. That is nice. And I feel like there's another movie I've seen that's kind of like that, but if it pops back in my mind,
Home Alone.
But yeah, Danny and Jamie, Home Alone. That's what it is. Danny and Jamie, kind of touching on what Danny says, and I always feel so bad about this. I feel like I'm being hateful or something, but it's so funny that Netflix has to add in a gay relationship into everything that they're doing. And it's always if it's not in the first season, it's definitely going to be in season 2. And I don't think there was one in Haunting of Hill House.
Theo.
Was Theo in one? Man, I haven't.
It was a rocky I wouldn't even call it a relationship. It was a thing.
I need to rewatch that. I haven't seen it since 2018, so it's a little fuzzy in my memory.
I watched it again before. Oh, what did you say?
Well, I just want to say, this one does not feel shoehorned, and it actually feels like a developed relationship, which was really nice.
Yeah, all the relationships are an organic feel.
Yeah.
This season.
It's cool that it doesn't feel, because some of these other Netflix shows, it's almost like they're trying to reach a quota or something.
Yeah.
You guys can just be a little more honest about what you're doing here. I don't know.
Stop pandering.
Yeah, stop being disingenuous, Netflix. And stop canceling every show that's good. Cut it out.
Didn't they cancel Sabrina?
I heard they canceled it, but then I saw something today that apparently they just announced season 4. I don't know if it's true or not. But do you know the other thing? That Sabrina show had such potential, and it's weighed down in so much preteen nonsense. And the comic book is so metal. It's so heavy metal. I love it. And then the show is we're cute and spooky. We shop at Hot Topic.
We're Instagram witches.
Yeah, we're Instagram witches. Dang, there's a screenplay in there somewhere. Jamie's crying for most of this movie.
Whoa.
Just at the end, really. But Jamie's kind of doesn't really have a lot of character. She's like a snarky gardener.
Yeah, she's like a butch.
She's
gardener.
plucky, you know. She's she seems like she's got a bit of a temper. She just seems like she doesn't put up with any BS, and that's about it. You know, she's independent.
Yeah, I can identify.
She's got fun curly hair.
What? She also she's our hidden narrator. We find out at the end of the story that the narrator who the show starts off with the narration scene. We see it set at a wedding, right? And then the narrator's telling them this story, like How I Met Your Mother style. Like, come sit down, kids. Let me tell you the story about how I met your babysitter. But then they drop the narrator for like 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, I forget that even happened.
And then they bring her back. And then when they get to that episode where it's like the spooky ghost background, it's the narrator for the whole thing.
You're like, who's talking again?
But then I'm also wondering, I'm like, well, if Miles doesn't remember what happened, how do you know what happened to Miles when he was at that school? Like, during the show, they're doing all these flashbacks. I'm like, how does the narrator know all this stuff? And I assumed, they gather the stories at the end. But if the kids can't even remember stuff, it just seems like there's some tales that the narrator's telling us that it's like, man, there's no way you could have known this, little Miss Gardner. What's going on here?
She could have learned it from Danny, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they heard a story.
Did have
Miles
a lot
got
of
kicked out of school. Yeah, it's definitely possible. Although the intricate history of the house, I mean, I guess maybe it was written down somewhere, but they must have done some research. If I was them, I just would have burned that house down. Like in those years of peace, when Danny and Jamie were like doing well before Danny like loses her mind essentially. Should have went back and just set fire to it in the middle of the night and ran away.
I don't know. Could have made things worse. You know, Viola could have come out of the water and been like, yo, my estate. Do you not realize how much trouble I've gone to try to like keep this thing going? She might have been real peeved, man.
I really liked that. I was just going to say, I really liked that ghost exposition episode, like we said, which was like episode 7, maybe.
It's 8.
8, which is all about Viola and her sister and the exposition about all of the ghosts, almost essentially. And I just thought it was so tragically sad, and really that it highlighted this idea that like the reason they don't have faces is because people don't remember what they look like anymore, and ghosts are essentially just projected memories. Projected images or stains on like their environment. And that was I thought that was really cool. And like we said, really melancholic, which like rang true with the entire season, but especially that point, Frank, where like, it's like no one remembers who they are. And that's why they're stuck in these loops.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way they explain ghosts too. I think that's such a creative way to like visualize what is, a made up entity. But a ghost is literally just like echoes of moments living through little disjunct parts of their lives, and they're confused and that whole thing you're talking about. They're like losing a little bit of themselves over time. I think that's really, really cool. It does raise one question to me though. How come Danny is straight up haunted? Like all these other ghosts are stuck at the place where they died, but Danny, it's like she's almost like, she's got a paranormal activity situation going on or something.
Danny
just following her everywhere.
Danny invited her in.
Oh, you mean in the beginning?
Oh, you mean
like, in the beginning with her ex?
The fiance.
Yeah, I mean Gendo Hikari. Yeah, how come Hikari's following her around everywhere?
Because she straight up killed him.
Yeah,
I guess that's true.
Yeah,
she broke his heart so bad that he stumbled into the street and died.
Well, you know what? That guy really needs to check before he opens his door,
Yeah, that was a bad move. You make bad decisions in times of like emotional duress.
Classic.
You know what I mean?
I really wish movies would stop doing that, honestly. I really wish people would stop doing the Final Destination, walk into the street, get hit by a car without anyone hearing.
Really, I felt a little bit more Mean Girls with that, personally.
Man, I was just about to say, I was like, if we're going to attach that to a movie, let's make sure we give Mean Girls the credit it deserves.
Oh, stop trying to make fetch work.
But yeah, that's a bit of Danny and Jamie. The tragic ending, it's a bummer to see Danny die. There's something about her that that I just really root for, even in the first season.
She's the American.
She's a good actress, and she's like very like innocent looking. She's very like the child of the family, you know what I mean? And you want to see her succeed. And I also love her outfits in this season of the show. They are so 80s. There's so many high-waisted jeans and they're all like baggy and everything. It cracks me up, man. I love it. The aesthetic part there was great.
So that gives us Jamie and Danny. We've got Hannah Gross and Owen. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Henry Thomas's character and his relationship was with Miles and Fiona's mother, right?
Yeah, this is it's a little strange because we don't really get to meet the parents like that much. There's a few times where they show up. But basically, yeah, we learn that their estranged uncle who's like drunk the whole time and is living in a different city and he doesn't want anything to do with these kids. It's because it's like his fault that the parents are dead. And it's his brother who finds out that, you know, he was with his brother's wife. And Flora is his child.
Yeah,
Flores isn't his niece or anything. Yeah, and the show just really goes into what lying and like deception will do to a loving relationship. And we see that like what we were just talking about with Danny and Gendo Ikari, like that guy is so broken that he dies. You know what I mean? But then it is kind of sad because like Owen and Mrs. Gross don't really have that. It's just like unfortunate timing.
They're pretty pure. Yeah.
Yeah.
They missed their opportunity.
Part of me was like, dude, suck it up, man.
Yeah,
suck
he's
it up.
been a baby.
Yeah, you don't get the luxury of tapping out here. You need to go take care of business.
Yeah,
dude.
you're a parent, man. Like,
yeah,
and now your brother's dead, and you're just letting them. Yeah,
he's not really a victim of the situation either. He like very much caused the situation, dude. Like step up to the plate.
And his inaction to take care of his child and now stepchild caused the events of the entire show. If he had just like taken those kids away from Bly Manor and just had them live with him in his city and run his business, no one would have died. Like everyone would have been fine.
Well, somebody would have died. It just would have been other people living in that house. You know what I mean? It would have been the next people to occupy.
They own the house, don't they? I mean, it would just be an empty house.
If he like decided like not to sell it off or whatever. Or abandon it, because the first time it got abandoned, they were using it as a place for plague patients, and that's how that doctor got snatched.
Really, the lady in the lake's going to kill whoever's in that house if they get in her way.
Although it seems like after they leave, that it is abandoned until, you know, we get that little epilogue. Like it's from the 80s to like the 2020 or 2020 or whatever, like 40 years or so, 30, 40 years that it's empty. They just needed to drain that little lake, drain that little pond, burn that body. Let's move on, everyone. You know what you needed? You needed old Rorschach and his acoustic guitar and some sweet ass Elvis tunes.
Oh, you said Rorschach and Night Owl.
Oh, Night Owl, no! Oh no, wrong Watchmen character. Okay, yeah. So
at least you're
need
consistent.
old Night Owl to go down there, sing a couple songs, and they would have been like, you know what? There's your problem right there. You got a haunted pond.
Throw down a couple bucks and get the Ghostbusters to come by. You'll clean that thing up real quick.
There's your problem right there. This carburetor's flooded. Let me work on this broken down car for you. Fix the family some breakfast.
Imagine if somehow, because it's also set in the 80s, if the Ghostbusters had showed up at the end of this like season. Like Henry's like, oh, things are going so bad, but you know what? I've heard there's people in America that can help with this kind of problem.
And then Bill Murray shows up and starts asking everybody if they're menstruating.
Big ups to Henry Thomas for having a passable British accent.
Oh, you know what? I gotta say, I thought his was pretty bad.
Really? I thought it was passable. I think, what's his name? Peter, I guess, his name's Peter in this one. Luke from the first season. Yeah. He is a British actor, but he was doing a Scottish accent.
And he's from London. Yeah, he's like British. Yeah.
So that's talent, because it was, for me, I was like, is he Scottish? But yeah, Scottish just sounds so difficult to speak.
Yeah.
I don't
that accent.
I would say though, he might have an advantage because I'm sure growing up he was so close to, like I feel like we could do an accent on something, in our area, but if someone was like, "Hey guys, do a, Scottish accent," it's like, no way.
Yeah.
Or hey,
we can
David,
pull
do
off
a try to
dumb
do a
Texas
Brooklyn
accent real easy.
cop for me. And I fumbled the word cop really unfortunately there. I'm gonna have to remember to bleep that out.
Nah, that's staying in. I feel like that's more or less what we get from good old Henry. I guess next we'll save the kids for last. I feel like that feels the most just. The other two characters, the other couple, we have Oliver Jackson Cohen, previously mentioned. He's Peter. And we have Tahira Sharif, who plays Miss Jezel, who is like the old au pair who dies. And Danny is the one who's replacing her. But we find out that she has a relationship with Peter, who works for Henry. He's just like and his whole purpose is he's like trying to rip the family off essentially, for reasons of his own, but he's there as like kind of a bad character.
Yeah. And this is a quite unhealthy relationship. Like without the tragic end that the relationship had, even before that, not a great relationship, very bad situation happening here. I think one of the characters calls it like the wrong kind of love. The gardener, yeah, she's like the wrong kind of love can make you do a lot of stupid things.
He was so endearing to me in Hill House. Like I really rooted for Luke, and I was really bummed out about how things go down with Luke. And he's an addict in that first season, so he's made a lot of bad choices, but at least you kind of feel for him and you want to see him do better. But man, in this series, he's so despicable.
Yeah.
He's like such a manipulative little such and such. And I don't know, well, I know Frank did because we watched it together. I don't know if Danny saw it, but the Invisible Man.
Oh yeah. He is
with Elizabeth Moss.
He's the Invisible Man.
Yeah. He's the abusive boyfriend.
Yeah. That movie's amazing. He's great in that movie too.
That movie slaps.
He just has a typecast, he's got that abusive face, that manipulative face.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, like, I feel for you also because I really felt for Luke in the first season. I did feel like he had such a tragic story that just ended too soon for sure. And he never really he kind of like vindicated, but he never really got his like time of day to really shine. And he was just so downtrodden for the entire season that I kind of felt bad about him also just being a crazy villain in this one too. Well, he's not even a villain. He's like an anti-hero, but like, he's also just self-serving,
Yeah, he's introduced and you don't like the character, but slowly as things are revealed, you at least understand a little bit more why he's in the situation he is. Like he's essentially being blackmailed by parents who are terrible. So it's like, well, this poor guy's doing the best he can. But there's some like straight up, really threatening scenes where it seems like he's gonna kill this girl.
Oh, for sure.
Miss Jezel. It's very alarming.
I mean, then in the end, he kind of does. He convinces her like, "Hey, the only way we can stay together is if you do this whole ghost thing with me."
Yeah, he was willing to kill some kids to come back to life. So.
Yeah, that's really where it gets unforgivable, especially because he kind of gets caught and then he's like apologizing to Miles. And it's like, what are you talking about, dude? You were just about to like sentence him to wander the earth
to the shadow realm.
Yeah, for reals. Yeah, he's about to play a trap card on you, man. And you're apologizing? Get out of here. It's so ridiculous.
There's so Yu-Gi-Oh
many
references.
Why are there so many anime references this episode? Let's see if we can squeeze any more in.
He's definitely Seto Kaiba, dude.
He is Kaiba. I can see that for sure. Which makes Owen Joey, and I'm okay with that. And quick tangent.
I wonder what all these things mean.
Quick tangent. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, we have Yugi, right? We have Seto Kaiba, the bad guy. And then you have Yugi's friend, Joey.
Just Joey.
It's like,
wow.
What?
Yeah, it's a weird addition.
Yu-Gi-Oh is so ridiculous.
Yeah, that show is so stupid. But I watched it and I played a lot of that card game when I was a kid.
Yu-Gi-Oh the game is great.
Yeah, dude,
Don't
that
even
game
get
was
me
cool.
on that. Also, I think we were talking about Duel of the Roses at one point. Duel of the Roses is the Yu-Gi-Oh game for PS2.
PS2?
Awesome.
Super expensive now, too. But
Awesome
we're getting further and further off topic. Sorry, we're having a time jump. I'm time hopping right now into another conversation, another episode. Yu-Gi-Oh podcast coming next month. Anyways, Frank,
I will not be there. You guys let me know when the audio's up, and I'll bang that out for you.
Okay, so what else about Peter and Miss Jezzel though? What else about these two?
Both very talented actors, you know what I mean? They both do a very good job at doing, like, you really, even having the endearment, like you guys said, from him being Luke. This time he portrays a character so well that you really do hate the guy. You know what I mean? He's like unredeemable. And Miss Lesser on the other side, she was really just trying to do her best. I feel like she didn't do great, like in the end of things. Even as a ghost, like her solution to Flora dying is just like, well, let me like possess you again really quick. You won't have to like feel the death, and then that's fine, right? Like that's okay.
I guess that's better.
Yeah.
The expression "you sweet summer child" came up a lot when I was experiencing her part of the story. Like, come on, girl, you gonna believe what this guy's telling you right now?
Girl, you need to leave him.
Yeah, exactly. I was getting very sassy watching this series. But I guess that leaves us with really the stars of the show. Although technically Victoria Pedretti is like the main character. Danny definitely is. Yeah. But to me, at least, these kids stole the show. And that's Flora and Miles, who are the ones who are the most mysterious. At the beginning, like, because in the first episode, they lock her into their closet. And you already know that like something bad's going on. Like they're lying and they're not being truthful. And then, you have things like Flora's creepy little dollhouse where
that's the best, man.
The dollhouse is so cool, man. And it's such a great idea. Basically every character in the story, ghosts and like people, she's created a doll of them. And when you look in the dollhouse, they're all in the places they should be. And we find out later that it's one of the little kids, right? It's the little kid ghost who's the one who's moving these dolls around. But it's great too, because that really lays into the symbolism that surround like dolls and puppets in this show. That really comes up and occurs over and over again. And you think about, stuff like Pinocchio, which they kind of have a tale sort of similar to that, where a doll wants to be real. You know what I mean? Just like a ghost. It wants to be real. It wants to be alive. So I think it's really cool how they kind of tie all that stuff together. It's real mess.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't say it better. Like the dollhouse was an amazing part and addition to Hill House. And I actually had like, when I had first seen it, I had all these theories running in my head. Like, is she controlling everyone? Like, is Flora really behind everything?
That's what I was thinking too.
You know what I mean? And then, because you could also see the other ghost dolls in there, and you're just like, oh, she's like sending them after everyone. And I just thought it was really interesting. It was nice and creepy, where she's just like, no, you need to stay in your bed at night at this time because Lady in the Lake is coming out. She doesn't say that part, but it was nice and creepy. It was really good for building suspicion. Flora was great. I mean, she's kind of a rube, but it's like that's part of the character. I was getting some real Damien vibes from Miles too, but you also realize that that's not really who he is, and that's a really good revelation. You're just like, oh, it's actually Peter Quint possessing this poor kid.
That's why he seems like such a little jerk. It's because he's actually this big old jerk.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, the only thing about that, and what happened, it was early on. It was early on because they had a scene of Peter with Miss Jezzel. It must have been episode 2 or 3. And you see him get really aggressive and physical with her out of nowhere. And then it was like the same episode or the beginning of the next episode, we see Miles do the same thing. And then right then, and I don't even think it was me who pointed out, it was Michelle actually. She was like, oh, well, he's possessed by Peter. And I was like,
that's it. It fits. Yeah.
I liked the mystery with Flora a little bit better because I feel like maybe that was a bit of a red herring. We were supposed to think that she was behind it somehow.
The puppet master in the grand scheme.
The puppet master. Master.
Bastard. But yeah, man, solid. Those kids are solid. The acting was solid. Overall, great watch. I'll definitely be rewatching it again, probably in 2023 when the new one comes out. At the pace we're going.
One last thing I'll
right.
say, like, in high regard for the kid actors in this film is like, their performance doesn't get clunky when they switch over to like being possessed by adults. You know what I mean? They do a very good job at playing like their more mature like parts that they have to hit. You know what I mean? Flora nails the whole perfectly splendid thing. She seems very much like this fancy British lady. You know what I mean? Miles does a really good job at like playing this jerk, all those scenes of Mrs. Gross like catching him smoking and stuff like that, like the looks he gives her, the disdain he has. It's all so perfect, man. Both of these kids really nail like all of it.
I agree, man. What killer performances from these little kiddos here. Man, I don't know if there's anything else about the good old haunting of Bly Manor.
Yeah, what would you guys, why don't we just give each other our subjective rating on an A through F scale? Ooh. Pluses and minuses included. Why don't you go first, D-Pens?
I always feel so weird doing like ratings. I feel like in my head, and maybe it's a bit of OCD, but like if I were to give Haunting of Bly Manor like a B+, but then I also give like The Thing remake like a C+. Then in my head, I have to like tally each of those things and make sure, okay, is this movie better than this movie? It really throws me off. But I would say that Haunting of Hill House is S tier. And I'd say that Haunting of Bly Manor, I'm a teacher. I shouldn't have this much trouble with grades. I would give it a B-. Solid effort. Some deflated moments that could have been better if you'd done another draft, maybe. No, I'm just joking. But seriously, if a few things were moved around, if some reveals were, if they pushed some of these details that were so giving, if they pushed them back a little bit, I think I would have been, I think it would have been a nice A, but B- is where I'm at. What about you, Franklin?
I feel like I'd land right at a B. I'd agree definitely with the reveals and the pacing problems, but I feel like for me, the characters and the way that the actors give those characters life definitely like make up for it. Everybody who's supposed to be endearing, like you are definitely like all in for them by the time this thing rolls around, and everybody you're supposed to hate, you hate. A solid B for me.
Yeah, I'd have to go ahead and agree, but I'd also say B+ in my objective rating, because it is great in its own regard. It's totally different from the first one. I didn't like it as much, and like you said, Hill House is an S tier, and it's like something I can rewatch, and I did rewatch, and I enjoyed rewatching every part of it, catching little details. And I'm sure if I rewatch this, I'll catch more details and probably have another appreciation for it. But yeah, like things could have been explored better. The pacing could have been stretched better. I mean, the pacing could have been condensed better. I think like things could have been explored at a better pace, and I think that they could have explored more of the environment of Bly Manor, or just, made that into other episodes rather than extrapolating so hard on the romance stories, or just stretching moments where they didn't need to be stretched. So yeah, for that reason, I'll keep it at a B+.
So it sounds like we're at a strong 85% here on Uninformed Movie Reviews.
Definitely.
Let us know if you think 85 out of 100 is the right score or not. And what's your
or an
what's your
8.5 out of 10
Manor?
if you rather.
As always, if you like the podcast, just tell someone about it. Recommend an episode. Subscribe, click the bell, all that stuff. Send us an email, davidandfrankandbeans@gmail.com, and harass Apollo City Comics.
Please.
Report them for anything. Anything at all.